All right. Thank you, Zoom, for letting me know that recording is in progress. I hate that function, by the way, where they tell you that and this thing pops up and I got to clear it. Super annoying. Wouldn't be Tequila Tuesday without me complaining about something straight away. So that's how we're going to start. Welcome, everybody, to number 27, I think. 28? I don't remember which one. It's on the calendar invite somewhere. Joined here today by my good friend, Jeff Bajorek, who just told me that this is the second, podcasty kind of event thing that we have done together in the last 6 months or so. And apparently the last time we did one was also like the day after I shaved. So he is kind of taking credit for, me looking somewhat presentable these days. So I'll see you again in 6 months, Jeff, after I regrow the beard and shave it all off again. Jeff's been in sales for a long time, lives out in Michigan, avid golfer, general all-around good guy, shares a lot of good stuff on LinkedIn as well as Twitter if you don't follow him there. And he's also been hosting a morning show on Clubhouse with a couple of co-hosts that come in every now and then as well. And so, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing, man. Hold on. What happened?
I do know when he rejoins, it will start recording again because that happened to me earlier this week. So somebody's recording it somewhere. Scott is back.
What a nightmare. Sorry about that, everybody.
It's all good. So I've got a couple of things that I want to set or say about setting the tone for this evening. You got something to say, please say it. And you've done these before, and I know everybody kind of still, stays on mute, and that's probably better. I'm seeing that my volume is low. I can turn up my microphone here. Is that better, Bobby? Does that work? I like to do these things very, very interactively. And even when I train companies, even when I work with individual salespeople, it's like, if you got something to say, I'm probably going to say something that is at least going to make you tilt your head to the side and wonder about. If you want more clarification on something, please raise your hand and say something. Let's do this interactively. And one of the things that I say too is like, I can deliver a presentation. And if I was just going to deliver a presentation that was 60 minutes long or 45 minutes long or whatever, like if you just wanted to hear what I had to say, I could record it ahead of time and I could send it to you, and it would save us all a lot of time. You could speed up the playback. Companies wouldn't have to fly me out to do it, and it would save everybody a lot of time, a lot of hassle, a lot of headache. But we learn when we question. And one of the things that has helped me grow professionally is questioning just about everything. And so here we are tonight. I want to question you a little bit, and I want you to ask yourself some questions. I want you to answer some of these questions. I want to talk about these questions with you. And what I'm essentially laying out for you tonight is a homework assignment. And it's a homework assignment that I want you to spend half an hour on. If you're really feeling frisky, spend 45 minutes or an hour on it. And it's really going to key you in on the things that drive you, the things that keep you going forward, even when things get hard, because we know selling's a tough gig. They're going to remind you of, the reasons you want to win. And as I was counseling a client just the other day, he was telling me he was, really struggling with a lack of motivation. And I said, well, you're probably asking yourself to do something that does not line up with your core values, that does not line up with your purpose. And that is the real dissonance that we need to tackle. Now, I believe that most salespeople already know everything they need to know about selling in order to sell effectively. But there's typically something else that gets in the way. And when you kind of understand and really discover your why, and like we say on the Why and the Buy podcast, when you know your why, your hows and your whats get much better. When you can understand what your purpose is, when you can understand all your motivation and all your drive and where that's supposed to be aligned, you can put your activities and align them up with that so that everything's moving in the same direction. You really have maximum impact that way. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. Now, before I get into that, two things that are somewhat random that I will probably find a way to tie into this discussion anyway. But two things have come up over the last couple of days. One, I want to say this really quickly because I just think it's funny and I think it's important to illustrate what is still going on out there. But someone sent me a message on LinkedIn today and said, hey, and I wrote a post a couple of weeks ago about ghosted leads and why, who's really ghosting whom in that case. And you can go check, it's on my blog. You can go find it if you want. But because of that piece, he sent me a message and he said, there's someone on LinkedIn talking about ghosting leads and prospects and complaining about why these people won't call them back. I think you should weigh in on this. And so I weighed in and I got this comment back. And the gist of the comment that I got back from the author of this post was that he was trained in 1985 on the hard sell. And that's the way he does it. And he's sold millions of dollars and made millions of dollars over the last, 40 years because of the hard sell. And so that's what he champions. He calls himself the Michael Jordan of whatever. And as soon as you start calling yourself that, I start to get skeptical. But he's essentially complaining that people are ghosting him despite the fact that he champions the hard sell. And the fact that he did not understand the correlation there, the causation there, was I just had a little bit of a chuckle to myself. Like there are still people out there who are speaking very loudly, who are having some success because for some reason this stuff still works often enough to encourage people to keep doing it. But this guy can't understand why people won't call them back, even though he's bullying them into doing things that they don't otherwise want to do. So we get caught in our own bubbles every once in a while. And it's good to be in bubbles like this because everybody here wants to see everybody else here get better and we try to raise each other up. But just remember what's still happening out there. And there's always, always, always more opportunity. So keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to do, and I've got something I want to share really quickly. The Olympics are on and we always watched the Olympics growing up. It was just this really cool thing. And so I'm a big fan of that. My degree is actually in sports medicine. So I've worked with track and field before. I've worked with gymnastics before. Like I've been on those sidelines, been on those fields. And it is amazing to see what these athletes can do. So I watch the Olympics and my eyes just kind of leak the entire time. Like I know what people have put into their craft, with how hard they've worked, the early mornings, the late nights, the travel, the everything. And it's so cool to see someone accomplish their pinnacle, like their absolute top. Like this weekend, I watched this Austrian woman win the cycling road race. She was so far ahead of everybody on her bike that the person who came in second thought she won. And nobody in the world thought this woman was going to peel away from the pack so early in the race and then essentially race the course by herself. And she's got a day job, right? So like just and you see her after she crosses the finish line and she's just totally breaking down. Like she's having a moment. And fortunately the camera panned away from her to let her have her moment. But like, if you've ever worked so hard for something and then accomplished that thing, you understand what that feeling is like. But I want to share something with you. This is a picture I found this morning. We're going back 20 some odd years. This is me circa spring 2000. That is in the athletic training education room. That was in our classroom at Central Michigan University. That is Dot Richardson, who was an orthopedic surgeon, isn't anymore. She's a college baseball coach, but she was the shortstop on the first two U.S. women's Olympic softball teams. And that is her gold medal. And this is one of the coolest moments in my life because she came and she spoke to our group and she passed the medal along and we're all just looking at it. And I get my turn and she's standing right there. She says, well, you're going to put it on, right? Okay. And so I put it on. It wasn't even my gold medal, but the hair stood up on the back of my neck, on my arms, everything. Like you cannot, like I've accomplished a lot of things and I've accomplished things that have made me feel better than wearing someone else's gold medal, but you cannot possibly imagine the kind of feeling you get when you just even get to borrow the reward that someone got for being absolutely best in the world at what they do. And I'll never forget what she said. She tells me to put it on. She leans in for the picture and she's holding it right there. And she's right before this picture was taken, she said, it looks like it belongs there. And I'll never forget that feeling. The point of the story though, is that how good that feeling was when it was someone else's accomplishment. And that's what I'm going to find a way to tie back to later, because it's really important that you have your own purpose, you have your own why, and you have your own accomplishments that you want to reach. So I'll pull that photo off. That was a bad haircut at another time. Apparently we tucked our sweaters in back then. It is what it is.
We've all got those.
Don't we?
Yeah.
All right. So I've got some tricks here. Basically, I want to get into, I've got some cool stuff I can do. And if like right now I'm on kind of, what do they call it? It's the grid view, right? It's the gallery view. If you put it on speaker view, you'll actually be able to see what comes up on the lower third of my screen. But I want to get into these questions. And so if you don't have something to write with, if you don't have something to write on, get that. I'll give you 10 seconds. Amy's ready, because I knew Amy she's born ready. So I want you to—
I'm a natural.
I want you to write these questions down. And if you get a minute or so, I want you to start thinking about the answers and maybe jot down some of those answers. And let's talk about these. So the first question I want you to answer is, why do you believe in your company? Why do you work where you work? What is it about this company that you are choosing?
Jeff,
yeah.
Can I make a request real quick?
You can.
Can you just go a little slower? I can't write that fast.
Oh.
With your questions, or just repeat it for me.
So the question I want you to write down is, why do you believe in your company? The next couple of questions that I asked were just for context for that question.
Oh, I see. Okay,
so the main question's on the screen.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Tell me how you want me to pace this, boss, fearless leader.
I just tried to. Keep going.
Okay. Why do you believe in your company? So as you're thinking about this, as a little context, let's remember that you have a choice. Let's remember that you have a lot of options, that there's a reason you're at this company. My wife she's reminded me of this more than once. But, back in the day when I was a younger man, and maybe I'd stay out late with my friends, and maybe I'd stay out a little bit later than I told, my wife that I was going to be out. And you come home a little late, and, you got some apologizing to do. And it's like, we just got carried away and we ended up going to this place and everybody was going and what. And she said, Jeff, look, I get it, but you don't do anything you don't want to do. Nobody does anything they don't want to do. And sometimes we're compelled to do things that maybe we wouldn't like to do. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to recognize that you have a choice. So why do you choose to lease your services to the logo on your business card right now? And as we go through these questions, I want you to think about differentiation. I want you to keep that in mind, right? And that becomes really clear in a couple of other questions, because it's an outright, differentiating question. But think of all the reasons that you love the company you work for and you want to continue working for them. And I've got time for two of you to volunteer those answers right now if you want. If nobody wants to volunteer those answers, then we'll move through this and we'll have more time for open Q&A later.
Somebody's got to volunteer.
I'll raise my hand because I just started.
Jill.
Yeah.
Yes.
You look really good, Mr. Lease. I like the
Thank you.
new look. Summer's over. So hi, Jeff. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. So I just joined a new company and I had a few different offers. And so what really resonated with me was that everybody that I spoke to in leadership was really aligned in the same vision. And they had a super supportive infrastructure of product, technology, sales, all working together to accomplish that vision. Personally, I had the opportunity for making money quickly because of the systems that they have in place.
Awesome. So it's an environment where you feel like there's a high functioning team that coordinates and communicates well. And that's something that, look, most of us here have been doing this long enough to know that that's not exactly common.
It was hard to find. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you'd like to take for granted until you're out in the workplace and you realize, like, does the right hand even know what the left hand is doing? Because
Exactly.
yeah. So that's important. And then when you think about how those systems work together to enable you to make the kind of money that you want to make right away versus putting in your time, really, just showing up every day, trying to do a great job, trying to help the ball club, and the good Lord willing, things are going to work out for us, right? Like, this is a great situation. I've earned the right in my career with the work that I've done, with the reputation I've built, with the skills that I've learned to come in and make a big impact. This is a
Right.
situation I feel I can make that impact and actually be rewarded for it rather than dragging everybody behind me.
Totally. And also valued for that contribution. Like, they really did pursue me based on my knowledge and experience and made me feel like I was a key member of the team.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like you belong, you can make a contribution beyond being rewarded for the work that you can do. You can make a contribution and an impact on the company itself because of the
Yes.
situation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Very
So
well said. Thank you.
there's a comment I want to make, but I don't want to make it too soon because I don't want to bury the lead on the rest of it. But those are really important statements to be able to make. And I'm going to come back to those. So thanks for sharing that, Jill. Thanks for
Sure.
going first.
Sure.
Who's going next?
Anybody else?
I have to pick people.
This is the teacher in us. You just call on people when nobody raises their hand. Come on. Okay, Amy, we're going to pick on you.
I'll go.
Go ahead, Amy. Why do you believe in your company?
Well, I'm stepping in to help Colin Mitchell with his new community. So that's what I'm going with for now. Because the values align. I know that I have the skills and the connections and the ability to do what needs to be done so I can make good on my word and my commitment there. The people are pretty exceptional. So like attracts like. And I know that there's a need to, inject production skills into like the tech sales scene. And so I want to kind of pay that forward as well as someone that's like really close to that learning curve.
So that I think is really a question. Those are really answers. I'm not going to really push back so much, Amy, as there's a question coming that I feel like that answer might be better suited for.
Okay.
But because you talked really about the contribution that you can make and your skills and why you believe you're well suited, and that's coming in two questions. But
Okay.
It sounds like the environment is ripe for you to bring those skills, right? Similar to what Jill mentioned. You see a need, you see the need that this company is fulfilling for the community that you love and support and thrive in, and you see a contribution that you can make. So in the company, you see an opportunity. That's really, really important.
Where the values align too.
And the values align, you mentioned that, and the values align. And that is vitally important because in order for you to do your best work, you have to feel like your best work is going to be supported and encouraged. And that value alignment's really, really important. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move to the next question. You're going to start to see that these questions, the answers that you write, and I do this exercise with every client that I start with, because it's very important to get everybody on the same page. And it's very important to get everybody's mind right before we move forward with any kind of training or consultation or coaching. But what you start to see is that one answer gets you thinking about another question's answer, and then that starts thinking about the next question's answer, and it all ties up. And by the end of doing this exercise, and tonight we're going to spend half an hour, maybe 40 minutes on it. And that's about what I typically spend with a team. You really feel this momentum shift, and the energy in the room lifts. Because Amy, let's pretend that you and Jill were working for the same company on the same team, but you've never had this conversation before. Well, now you realize, you both said a couple of things. I feel like I can make an immediate contribution. I feel like there's value alignment with this organization. And I feel like I'm encouraged to do my best work, not just beaten into submission and told to deliver a number until they pay me. And so that's really, like, the other 4 people on your team, they see that too. And they start to feel as if they can contribute along the same lines. If they don't feel the same way, they're encouraged to start feeling that way. If they do feel the same way, they're on with you, and it's all momentum, and everything starts moving in a very positive direction. So you're going to see that more as we work through this.
Jeff, can I add something to that too?
Yes.
I would venture so there, we're seeing a lot of talking about coaching, but what I heard and what I saw is pretty baller. And what you just said is that there's a coaching a team aspect of being able to bring people together on common ground. And that I think it's rare and beautiful. Like we don't get to experience that with colleagues very often. And so I like it.
Cool. Thank you. The next question. Why do you believe in your products, services, solutions? What is it about what you sell that gets you fired up? So I'll give you a couple minutes to think about this. I'll try to add context without asking more questions because Scott doesn't like that. And
I don't mind it. I can't write fast enough. Yeah.
It's a reason to watch the recording and do the whole thing all over again.
Good point.
Again, you have options. There's probably a reason you chose to work for the company that you work for. There should be undoubtedly a belief that what you do leaves people in a better position. There's got to be something about that product that's differentiated enough. I'm going to keep coming back to that theme. That's differentiated enough for you to choose this company over something else, or for you to at least want to position that product, that service, that solution against your competitors. And you've got to be you either have to have done your diligence on the company well enough to join them, or you've worked for that company long enough that you've seen the product work, that you trust and believe in the product. We all know that if you don't believe in what you sell, you're not going to sell it. You're not going to be very good at it. So why do you believe in it so hard? Why do you believe in it so much? Why are you willing to stake your professional credibility and reputation on this thing that you sell? Right? So let that sink in for a few seconds, and then I'll take 2 more volunteers. And really, I'm not going to be a hard ass about this. We don't need to pick 2 people. If nobody raises their hand in a few minutes, we'll just move on to the next one. And there's more time.
We're
to
gonna
get into this later.
We've got one. Jenny Brennan, all the way from Ireland. She raised her hand the last second on the last one, and I saw it, and so I want to recognize her for stepping up. So maybe we'll have her answer this one. I
Awesome.
see you, Jenny. You can do this.
Oh, thanks, Scott. Hi, Jeff. How's it going? My name is Jenny. I'm calling. It's very late at night. I'm in Ireland, so bear with me. I just jotting down my answers actually. Yeah, I've worked for Agora Pulse for 5 years, and I really believe in everything that we're doing. I can probably answer the last question much better because I'm super passionate about that and the product and the service. But I really believe in what we provide to our customers because of the passion that goes into it from the team, and the reliability of the product itself, and the service that we provide to our customers afterwards. And that's what they stay. That's what they come for, and that's what they stay for. So
that's so good. The answer to this question often comes down to reliability. And I think there's something that's very important that's tied there, is because of what I mentioned before. You're staking your professional reputation to this, which means that when it doesn't let you down, you notice, because when it lets you down, you really notice, right? So salespeople, particularly if there's any tenure to their career at all, they recognize that, man, I'm going out there because I believe in this. And if you let me down, I don't believe in you so much. And as being a guy whose company has let him down before, yeah, you pay a lot of attention when those things happen, and you start to recognize when you really have that security of a product doing what it says it's going to do. I had a conversation with a new client that I'm bringing on just a couple of hours ago, and they're like, Jeff, we're struggling. And it was really cool. This is all hands meeting, no leadership, just no recording, no nothing, just reps talking shit sometimes on what they're frustrated about. And they're like, Jeff, we don't know how to present what it is that we can do for people, because we get pushback whenever we come back with other creative ideas. And we got a company that's telling us to go be creative, but then we come back and be creative, and operations tells us to sell what we have because we have plenty of it on the shelf. And like, just the frustration there and the dissonance between sometimes operations and sales is really, really, it's problematic. So I love that you said reliability, and I love that you said, I love this company so much because we say what we're going to do, and then we do what we say, and the product backs it up. Like, you feel bulletproof in those situations. If you said yes, you can do something, you believe you can do that thing. There's never any question. The key here, your customer feels that too. Your prospect really feels that. And so it's such a valuable thing to say. And I could listen to you talk all day because I love that accent. It's like people from that side, you know, you all speak English. I speak English too, but it's not the same language. I promise. It's just, it sounds so much better when you say it than when I do. But I appreciate you staying up late with me. Anybody else want to add to that, or do most people's answers come down to reliability and trust and good faith?
Jeff, I can chime in a little bit.
Rock on.
Brian,
Hey, what's up, Scott? How are you? Long time.
I saw Brian in person the other day. So.
And you had the full beard.
Yeah, I was very excited. Sorry, continue, Brian.
So for me, you know, of course, I love the team, and I think what the team is doing is amazing. But you know, in the year and a half or 2 years that everybody's kind of had, where we've gone through COVID, and you know, a lot of us, including myself, have gone through a job change. You know, finding jobs, changing jobs is really important, and I've seen the impact it can make on other people's lives, and the importance of finding the right place. And our solution helps people find jobs in the end. I mean, we technically help companies find applicants, but in the end, it's a job seeker putting in the hard work and all that to find the right position for them. So for me, you know, that really connected the dots.
What you do alters the trajectory of someone's career. Think about that. Like, if you can't get fired up to do that, right? We're talking about making change on an existential level, not just on a personal level, not just on a happiness level. You're talking about altering the arc of someone's career, making them more fulfilled in what they do, making them more successful at what they do, bringing them more options for what they do and what they can provide for their family. You know, it's funny, this is a departure, but I remember talking to a client. He was actually a competitor who became a client once I left the industry and came into this business. And he and his wife, they weren't able to have kids, but they fostered and then adopted these 3 kids. And I looked at him and I was like, you saved at least 3 lives. Not only did you impact those 3 children, getting them out of a toxic situation, and it's really weird too, because the parents were addicts, and I've got a lot of sympathy for addicts. I can understand that. I'm not trying to shame addicts. Like, it's problematic, but the situation for these kids was toxic. And so there was a reason that protective services had to pull them. So the altering of their lives, the trajectory of their lives there. And then think about future generations that are impacted from these kids who are going to have much more of a shot, right? Like, that's the first analog that comes to my mind, the first analogy that comes to my mind. What you're doing may not be quite so severe, but I think about me leaving a job where I was thrilled making $16 an hour to getting into a sales profession that made 6 figures possible. You know, from learning how to sell so that multiple 6 figures was possible, to then, you know, I think about my kids, man, my kids have no idea what I went through growing up. I had it pretty good. I mean, my 10-year-old's been to Disney World 3 times already. Like, he has no idea how good he has it. I kind of like it that way, but at the same time, I'm also really proud that I get to take my kids on vacations I never went to. They've been on airplanes so many times. Like, you get to do that and help with that for people who really need it. And sometimes this is the beauty of it that I hope you'll recognize soon, if you haven't already. They don't even see that coming yet. Sometimes they don't even know what's possible yet, because they're just getting in, just making that transition. So you make a real difference on people, and thus generations of people, right? That's one of the things that's so rewarding about what I do. It's one of the things I know Scott gets a ton of value and reward and fulfillment out of because I watch some of the things that, that he puts out there. And it's like, look, these are life lessons that both he and I feel fortunate enough to learn and an obligation to share, because not everybody has those things put in front of them. And we all get to help each other in that way. So you're doing it, Brian. That's tremendous. That's what a cool thing to get you out of bed every morning. I'm going to go to the next question, unless anybody's got any follow-up that they want to put on this. All right. Toughest question on the board. Why do you believe in yourself? This needs no context. I've got 2 more questions after this. This will be the toughest one to answer. The next one will be the most important one to answer. And the last one is a trick question.
See, this is the easiest one to answer, I think.
You think?
For
Jeff,
me, at least.
Jeff, what was that question again?
Why do you believe in yourself? This is the toughest one that most people have to answer. And the default answer that I get is because other people believe in me. Okay, dig deeper. Why? Scott, I'm not surprised that this is an easy one for you to answer because you have this kind of thing figured out.
Yeah, the other ones are way harder for me.
Okay.
Way harder.
Well, Scott, why do you believe in yourself?
Because I've already been through the thing that is the hardest thing that I'll probably go through my whole entire life, and I made it out the other side.
Yep.
So what do I have to fear or worried about? Closing a deal? No. Getting fired? No. Getting a promotion or raise? No. Whatever. I just don't care about those kind of things in a way that massively kind of stresses me out. And I feel like going through what I went through, I had 2 choices. I could play the victim, or I could tell the story that it turned me into somebody with superpowers. And so I chose the superpower direction. Well, it's that simple for me.
Right. There's something about those near-death experiences that give you perspective that other people just will never have the opportunity really to learn until it's way too late. And it's amazing how that transforms you. For other people, there's still a lot of uncertainty. There's still a lot of, have I made the right choice here? Am I doing the right thing? This is really hard. I see other people making it look really easy. Am I even doing the right thing at all? And it's funny. I don't know if Galen is still here. I don't know if she's still with us. I saw her on video for a minute. But
I'm here.
hello again.
Hi.
Nice to see you again. I didn't mean to make you pull off, come and join the video, but we talked about this on the podcast that released earlier last week. Like, I want my kids to know some kind of struggle because I think struggle is important. I don't want them to struggle with the same things that I struggled with. I want to give them opportunities to choose their struggles, right? There's privilege in that, but I want, they need to know what struggle is. They need to know what adversity is, because I think that's what we're here for. I think that's learning through adversity is really, really important. You have to have something that encourages you to keep going, and you have to have some perspective to know that you've been there before. Scott, you've been up against stuff that most people, and fortunately, most people won't encounter. But the benefit of what you encountered is that unflapping belief in yourself that I think we all wish more people had.
I think the story that I try to tell and pass along, though, is you don't have to go through the same thing or the same degree of thing that I went through. Like, everybody here has been through something that is the hardest thing that they've ever been through, and you're still here and you made it out the other side already. And I just think that not enough people who haven't gone through a super traumatic, near-death kind of thing tell themselves that story. And I wish that you would tell yourself that story. You don't have to go through this like hyper tragic kind of situation, right? You've gone through things, Jeff, that have been the hardest thing that you've ever been through. And I might not have been able to make it through those things in the same way that Galen has, right? So I just think it's an easy fallback for us to just be like, I believe in myself because of all this shit that I've been through. and I'm still here. I'm still kicking. I'm still positive. I'm still trying. I'm still succeeding. And if you just default to that real quick, to me, if you can do that, this question becomes the easiest question to answer. And that's the backbone and the strength of like everything you do moving forward.
Love that perspective. Anybody have anything they want to add?
Yeah, this is Jeff.
Yeah.
I think that, it's a great question, and I've never really spent a lot of time asking myself that question. So as I've been thinking about it, I've been doing this a long time, and I feel confident that, my war stories and my experiences give me a foundation of strength and knowledge to be able to answer and address, for the most part, the majority of the questions that could be thrown at me and considerations. But I'm also humble enough to understand that I don't have all the answers, and that I am completely comfortable with being vulnerable in any situation, and communicating that when I don't know, and I'm honest. And that honesty and that curiosity, and genuine curiosity, I think, is what has always carried me forward in my level of confidence, because it's okay to not know everything. And I try to teach the people that I mentor that, especially new sales reps, that it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to not feel like you're stupid, or ignorant on a subject, as long as you're willing to learn and you're curious enough to ask those questions in a genuine way, and you're open to listening and truly understanding. And I think that when it comes down to that, you're just really building your foundation, continuing to always build your foundation and sharpen your saw, so that the next conversation you have, you'll be able to utilize that information.
That's so great, Jeff. And thank you for sharing that, because what you mentioned is genuine curiosity. You can't be really curious unless you're willing to be wrong. And you can't be willing to be wrong if you don't believe in your ability to be okay in that situation, right? It's like showing up for a 90-minute presentation in front of a bunch of people that you have a lot of respect for without a real presentation in mind. And let's get after it for a little bit, right? It's standing up in front of a team for the first time, knowing that you've earned it, and knowing there's a reason that you've earned it. And now it's time for you to lead, because that's the job that they need you to do for them, and that all those people believe in you. But again, why do those people believe in you? Right? So the security of being able to do the things that you need to do, even if you've never done them before, is vital, particularly when you're working your way up in other positions. Like, there should be a point in time regularly where you have to do something that you have never done before, and there are a bunch of people counting on you. And if you're not putting yourself in that position, you're not growing. So what leads you to believe that you can do that again? That's the heart of this question. That's the purpose behind this question. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. Next question. Why do you believe your customers are better off for having done business with you? This is the differentiation question. This is very specifically differentiated. You've got customers. They're better off in your hands than anybody else's. Why? What is the value you can deliver that nobody else can? And what are the impacts of that value? Brian, you alter the career trajectory of people. That's big. Do your competitors believe the same thing? Or do they just find new people or jobs for new people? Or do they just help companies put people in positions? You approaching it the way you do is giving you a leg up on your competition, I promise. Why are your customers, why are your clients better off for working with you? I'm tempted to just call on Vicky, but I don't know if she's ready.
Oh, Jeff, why am I not surprised?
You poked the bear.
I guess so. And I am standing in the checkout line, but that's okay. We can multitask. No, I can multitask because I can tell you why people are better in my hands. That's the question, right?
That is the question. Why are your customers better off for you, or better off for doing business with you?
Because I'm going to do what's right, and I'm going to take care of them, and I'm going to give them all the information that they need in order to make a decision, but I'm not going to force a decision on them. I'm going to ultimately work towards getting them to do what's right for them this time, because guess what? I want them to come back next time.
And thank you for sharing that. And you can go back on mute because I can riff on that while you finish checking out. Your immediate answer here, almost always, and I only say almost because I don't like speaking in absolutes, but almost always is directly related to something that you do that you know your competition doesn't. And that differentiator, like I've said this, I wrote this in my book. I said, if you cannot differentiate, you cannot sell. Because if everything's all the same, then you're just competing on price. And if you're competing on price, you're not actually selling. So if you cannot differentiate, you cannot sell. And when you recognize that your customers are getting something from you that's going to alter the trajectory of their business, that's going to provide value and outcomes that no one else can provide, now you're getting at the heart of the value that you create and the value that you provide. We have one more volunteer.
I can add.
I see you,
This
Jake.
is near and dear to my heart right now. I started a company called mobile.dev, and the reason why our customers are choosing us than all these others right now that have been very well established in the space. To give context, we are a test automation platform that catches quality issues for mobile applications before you ship a new version versus reacting to signal you might be getting in production from your users. And the reason these early companies choose us is because we can identify those issues ahead of time with confidence, and no one else in the market's doing that. And we have the expertise and engineering to make that happen, and just a really compelling value prop of what it provides companies in terms of saving the time and effort for development teams. So that's why, we're a two-man team, but we've got Reddit as an Uber as like our first clients because we're actually doing it and showing the results. And so we have a lot of confidence there.
That's game-changing kind of stuff, right? That's got to get you out of bed every day.
Oh yeah.
And
keeps me out of bed too long, probably.
Well, I can believe that too. So I want you to look collectively at your answers to these questions. If you've been writing, and if you're watching this on a recording, you should pause between every question. You should go back and you should write the answers to these questions. And I want you to take a look at the journal entry you just put together. And all you did was answer questions based on your own values, based on your own feelings, based on your own passion about the choices you've made to be where you're at. How many of those statements would be compelling to your prospects or your customers? And how much of that language is actually in your sales language? And why isn't more of it there? Here's the last question. Why do your best customers buy from you? So if I lined up, this is why it's a trick question. You'll all have an answer. But if I lined up 100 salespeople and asked them this question, 5 would know because they've actually asked. 15 would guess right because they're pretty intuitive, they pay attention, and they're smart people, and they can, they can figure it out. 80% of salespeople would be shocked to learn the real answer because they just assume it's what marketing told them or what's on the website or the bullet points on your shiny brochure that you take door to door to let people know how you can help them. And what's really interesting is if you look at the comparison, if you compare your website to your nearest competitor's website or your brochures, whatever it is, I used to sell door to door, so I have that on the brain. Like if you just remove the branding and the colors, right, and maybe change the font a little bit, they all look really scarily the same. So you have to get out of that. The really important thing here, though, is that you need to ask your best customers, not your worst customers, not the ones that you get rid of. You know, you never have a better day in sales than when you fire your worst customer. If you haven't learned that yet, you got to learn soon. But when you ask them, they will tell you. And this is a really important thing because they will actually give you the language to find more people, more companies like them. And the first time you ask, you say, you know, Scott, why did you choose to do business with us the first time? And you'll say something along the lines of, well, you know, you had a really good product and the payment terms were good and you were pretty easy to work with. And so, yeah, we liked you. So we moved forward. And it's like, you know what, Scott, I appreciate that. That doesn't help me as much as it could. Could you be a little more specific? Because what I'm really trying to do is understand exactly what it is that I'm doing for you or that I did for you the first time, because I want more customers like you. You're a great partner for us. We've always done business really well together. I believe we help each other. This is really good. I want to create more than that, or more of that rather. Can you be a little more specific than that? And when you get vulnerable enough with your clients to create the space for them to get vulnerable with you, they'll give you the answer you need. And then you say, I really appreciate that. That was the first time you did business with us. Why do you continue to do business with us? Why are you still here? And they'll give you the answer to that question too. And you just got everything you needed in your customers' words to go find more just like them, to replicate your best customers. Now, if you're feeling frisky, you may want to ask them if you can, for their permission, for you to use their words in a testimonial for your website. And if you're really feeling crazy, maybe you've had a couple of tequilas together on a Tuesday, you may ask them if there's someone they know who might also benefit in the same way from your services, right? So you can take that interview, not only does it give you great marketing, you could turn it into a testimonial, you could turn it into a referral possibility or some potential there too. I'll leave that up to you. I'm just putting that right over there where you can find it. But the important thing is tapping into why your customers bought from you the first time so you can find more like them, and tapping into very specifically why they continue to buy for them so you know what to double down on. And when you know that 80% of your team or 80% of your colleagues are making assumptions that are going to end up being wrong, there's a serious advantage there. So when you add up all these answers, and when you start thinking about this, doesn't it start to kindle a fire in your belly? Don't you start to get a little fired up? Like, aren't you ready? Is this not the reason you get out of bed every morning to do what you do and hit it as hard as you hit it? Because you've got goals and you've got things you want to accomplish and you've got a legacy to leave and you've got people that you're supporting and you've got people that are counting on you. If it doesn't, you're in the wrong spot. If it does, you have something to lean on when it gets tough. Because COVID made it tough. There are going to be seismic shifts in your industry that you can't control, that you won't be able to stay ahead of all the time, that are going to make it tough. There's going to be something that goes on in your family that's totally out of your control and totally off the field as far as work's concerned. It's going to make it tough. There's got to be something that keeps you going when there's more friction. This is the exercise that keeps it going. Really, really valuable. I started doing this exercise 6 years ago. Some of you know, when I started my career, I kind of fell backwards into this phase of my career. And one of the people I reached out to first was Jeffrey Gitomer. And I mean, King of Sales, if you haven't read him, then where have you been? The stuff is timeless. It's classic. And I know Scott's got a great story about Jeffrey. And one of the things, when I got started, before I really started thinking about things for myself, really the reason that I knew I could do this was when I spent a weekend with him, with some other people, and was able to license some of the content to get me started while I was while I was developing my own. And this is one of the exercises. This is the only holdover. When I started doing this exercise, I saw what it was doing to people. I don't know, in fairness to Jeffrey, it's his, but I also don't know that he does with this what I've done with it. And I think this being the basis or the jumping off point for all that stuff, this is an exercise worth doing. And I've just seen it set the tenor for so many sales teams and the jumping off point for them to really recognize what they can accomplish. But, you know, I write a lot about swagger and I talk about mindset a lot, and I talk about belief a lot, and all that stuff is important. These are the tools, these are the questions you can ask yourself to really instill those values and remind yourself of what makes you you, and why you've chosen to work for the company you work for, sell the things you sell. Why do you do this instead of anything else? Why are the people who count on you better off for counting on you? These are big time questions. Most people gloss over them. I've just given you the call to action to revisit them. And you should revisit them regularly, particularly when things aren't going so well. So I've got another point I want to make in a couple minutes, but Scott, I'll throw to you.
Yeah, I actually want to ask the first question. So you just said, you know, you want to revisit these. And I think the revisiting of these questions is not talked about enough, and very, very sporadic, right? Like people are going to think about it themselves, these questions today, and it might be years before something else kind of joggles their memory and you get into this kind of reflective state. So when you tell people, you know, think about this stuff, come back to it, ask yourself these questions regularly, what kind of cadence of asking yourself this question do you recommend? How often does somebody do it? Is this annual, semi-annual?
I think it's probably semi-annually. I think, but I think at the same time, annually, I think is a really good cadence, because, and we all have those New Year's resolutions. We all have that, you know, we flip the calendar, the counter goes back to zero kind of thing. Like, am I still in the right place to start that counter again? Right? Is this really where I want to be? But I also think the impromptu, the random prompts rather than impromptu, but the random prompts for this are when you're really just fed up with what's going on. Are you in the right place? Does your manager drive you crazy? Do your reps drive you crazy? Does the CEO, you know, is there something you just don't understand and you don't appreciate? And it's just like, man, I'm just frustrated and I don't know why. I think that's a great time to revisit this stuff.
So let me push back a tad bit and hear how you answer this, because I think it's super important. Because some people can experience those moments regularly, weekly, daily, whatever. And I wonder how you coach people who have a tendency to fly off the rails and go way deep into their feelings and into their brain and ask themselves this question over and fucking over until the point where they're spending way too much time thinking about all this and not actually doing anything about it. And you get this kind of paralysis. So that's what I'm trying to get at here, is like the balance between asking yourself this question regularly to stay on point, and asking yourself too much and overthinking and actually doing more damage.
There are people who get caught in cycles, and it's this real feedback. It's this really odd feedback loop where it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to try this, but then I don't know what to do, so I'm going to try this thing, and they just never kind of snap out of it. And typically there's something bigger going on, and that's putting them in an environment where they're questioning everything all the time. And it comes from this lack of belief, right? So if you find yourself where you're questioning yourself all the time, weekly, daily, like even monthly, I think when you find yourself in that position, the symptom itself is the diagnosis of like, well, why do I have to continue doing this? Why am I always in this position where I'm questioning whether or not I'm in the right place? If you have to question it over and over and over again, you're probably just not in the right place, but it's probably something bigger and scarier than you're willing to admit. And that's where you need to phone a friend. Right. It can be your bestie. It can be your college roommate. It can be your cousin that you grew up with. It should be someone who knows you really well and is willing to have a hard conversation with you. But it's one thing to just gear up for adversity. It's another thing to be stuck in this loop where it's like, man, I'm questioning this all the time. If you're questioning it all the time, it's probably a reason. And you're probably in the wrong place.
Thanks, Jeff. Cynthia, let's go to you with the first question.
Thanks, Scott. And thanks, Jeff. Jeff, I always love hearing you speak. I love your input on my question, which I don't think is uncommon. I'm sad to say. So I've been with I joined my company a couple of months ago, and my why for joining is because I believe in the value proposition. I believe in the growth potential. I believe in the value that I can add. Super excited about the role. However, we just got a new VP of sales, like almost 2 weeks after I joined, I think, or a few weeks after I joined. And he is, I'm sure he's super knowledgeable, but he is very passive aggressive. So instead of being, I'm more used to directness. I respond to that better. Like, just tell me how it is, and then we'll have a conversation. And I promise I won't go away crying because I like the input. And so anyway, he's kind of a bully. And so he essentially is like locked in, I don't think he's sold in a long time. And so his story he tells over and over is how when I started, I had a phone in the yellow pages and, yada, yada, yada. And so he's like, all he cares about is like people making phone calls. It's like, if I don't see phone calls being made, then, you're never going to hit your number. And so we had a sales meeting today, and he was like, I was off the hook because I'm still super new, but he was really pounding my colleagues about how like the pipeline didn't look good and why isn't there enough opportunities. And people were trying to explain like, what's happening in their regions. And we're talking about global. We have people in Singapore, in EMEA, in California, in New York. Yeah. And he was just like, well, you're not telling me why we don't have more opportunities. And so anyway, I was just like, he's just so stuck on calling as opposed to, multi-channel, which I believe in. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did have my chance to speak. And I was like, here's what I think, here's what I'm doing. And he was like, I don't care if, if you want to use LinkedIn or smoke signals, whatever it is, just get the opportunities in there. But he was very, very just facetious. And I think it's really hard because this guy has the power to fire all of us. And he alluded to that, of course, because that's the type of leader he is. But really, I see it. He has the power to help us, right? He can do what we need, and we need more marketing support. We need more collaboration. There's many things that we need. And this is not that he just doesn't want to listen. He doesn't want to hear it. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, I know my why. I think his why is he's likes the power.
You know what's worse than a bully? A passive aggressive bully. You know what's worse than a passive aggressive bully? A passive aggressive bully with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove because he's a new guy. Okay. So understand where he's coming from. He's showing his hand, right? You've read him pretty well. I trust your judgment. We know each other well enough. I trust your judgment. Okay. He's going to challenge you at times. You're going to need to push back. And I don't think it's so much pushing back as much as having a boundary. And let's say his name's Jeff. We'll pull that out of the air and I'll just use my own name. And you're going to have to say, Jeff, what's this about? I appreciate where you're coming from. I think I understand where you're coming from, but I need to know what this is about. Is this about pipeline? Because I feel like my pipeline's adequate. And if you've got questions about my pipeline, can we have a conversation about that? Can we, behind closed doors or just one-on-one or whatever, let's talk about that. I want to make sure that you feel confident in my ability to deliver my number, which is related to pipeline. That's fine. If we have differences and opinions about that, I'd at least like an opportunity for me to show you where I'm coming from so we can try to, understand each other. Okay. And there are going to be those times where you just need to let it roll off your back because you realize that his MO is to be passive aggressive leader with a chip on his shoulder who could fire you. Just wait. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Right. I don't think there's clearly still a place for those leaders because they keep getting hired. But you, I think, have to steel yourself to either understand that it's coming and let it roll off your shoulders, or recognize that you're way too talented to deal with that bullshit and it's time to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, and
But-
that's a shame. It's a shame because I think that the team's going to suffer. And I think we'll put it this way: he's already started cleaning house, and he's been there less than 2 months. And so
Yeah.
you know what it's like though with the new leader, everybody wants to put their like plant
Stamp.
their flag. Yeah,
Yes.
they make changes, and sometimes I get it. Sometimes changes make sense, and sometimes, a lot of times, in my experience, it's just change for change's sake. It's some crappy idea that's important for 6 months until everybody, and it silently goes away in the night because the leader doesn't want to admit that they made a mistake. I get it.
Right.
I've seen this guy before, but yeah, I was just super curious, and I agree. I think and I'm super pragmatic because I don't take these things personally. But I mean, let me just give you an example. He joined, and when he came to New York to meet me, we had breakfast together, and he at least 3 times during the conversation told me how rich he is. And
Yeah.
how he doesn't really have to work, and they took him out of retirement to come work there, and how his grandchildren don't ever have to work, but he doesn't tell them because he doesn't want to lose their motivation. I'm not kidding. This actually happened. So just to get context, I was
Yeah.
laughing my
Oh
ass
my
off
God.
inside. Yes.
Then why
Oh
is he
my
so
God.
insecure? Like okay. So this is what I can tell you. I decided that I was just going to stand up to my manager, and I decided that I had earned the right because I was a top performer and I had the results, and it wasn't like I felt I was bulletproof, but I felt like I put up with enough bullshit to where I was just like, hold on a second. And I'll give you an example. I forget what year it was, but it was just after Christmas. And I had cleared my number by a lot. Like I was leading the team, and I get this email and say, "Hey, Jeff, the team's a little behind. I know you're way covered, and I know you're probably looking forward to putting your feet up between the holidays, and you've earned that right. That's great. But we could use a little bit of help. So if you got any rabbits you can pull out of hats or whatever, like we just appreciate anything and everything you got." All right, that's cool. Every Thursday I met with my best customer, and it was an inventory meeting. It was looking ahead at the surgery schedule. I brought a lot more value than just selling them stuff, which is why they paid more for my stuff than anybody else. But I go in on my regular Thursday, it was the 27th or 28th of the month or whatever, and they placed a big order. I didn't ask for anything. They just said, "Hey, we got some stuff coming up. We want to restock, whatever." And you're doing well when one of your best customers proactively places an order at the end of the quarter that they don't need. And just because they know it's going to help you and they got money to spend, so it might as well be with you. So I placed one of those orders. 45 minutes later, get a call from my manager. "Does that order need to ship? Because some other people came through and we've covered our number, and that might be a nice way to start January." I said, "Todd," because that was his name, and I don't care if this is not fair to Todd.
Of course, it's Todd.
I said, "Todd, this is how this is going to go. They asked for that stuff. I said we had it. It's got to ship. Our customers don't deserve being treated like this. So here's the deal. This is how it's going to go. If we got an order and it's in-house, we're shipping it. If we don't have an order, and we need it for the end of the quarter, I'm not going to alter the specs on that order just so you or even I can make my number. It's not fair to our customers. I'm not moving anything up. I'm not holding anything back. What comes in, comes in. I'm just going to go out there and sell." Todd, are we okay with that? He's like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right." Now, would your guy do that right now? Probably not. And I had worked with Todd and for Todd for a couple of years at this point. And so, we knew I had felt him out well enough to know how to position that. And I'd also earned my right to call a couple of shots. I don't know if that's really calling a shot, but I was like, "Listen, my customers don't deserve that. And you know this." And he's like, "Yeah, you're right."
Well, it's just showing your integrity. I mean, and I think he probably knew that he was pushing it. But I agree with you. I'm with you, and I think the key for me, and thanks for your feedback, because I'm like, is it just me? Do I think this guy's a jerk and I'm wrong? I know I'm not wrong, but I had to ask. But
Yeah.
No, you're
I'm
definitely
super
not wrong.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, but I'm super pragmatic in these situations because I've dealt with I was in finance early in my career. You don't find bigger jerks than people there, in other areas and whatnot. So I've seen this guy before, and I'm super pragmatic, and I'm with you. I try to take the emotion out of it when you have conversations, because then I think it gives you more like strength too, right? Like they're like, okay, all right, but I like to keep it real. And so anyway, thanks for the feedback.
Sure. Well, I would encourage you to keep it. I would encourage you to keep it that real. And the better the results you deliver, the more able you are to have those conversations, right? But at some point, it might be like, hey, buddy, how do we work together? Because I see your style, and I really prefer to be a little bit more direct than that. But listen, I love what we do here, and I want to deliver for you because I chose this place for a reason. So how does this work best for both of us? Like I believe as a leader, your team are your customers now. You got to treat them like customers. You got to understand that you're asking them to do something they wouldn't ordinarily do if it weren't for you asking. That makes their request sales calls. And when you say yes, that makes you their customer, right? But I also believe the same thing about managing up, right? You got to have him maybe change some of his behavior a little bit. That means you got to approach it like a sale. Have you justified the reason for your ask? Have you proven enough value to make the ask? And it's a little bit of a different dynamic to think about it that way. But if you put it through that lens, you find there are some boxes that don't often get checked, and those boxes not being checked are the reasons you don't get what you want. So I don't think it's that far of a stretch.
Thanks, Cynthia. Brian, you had a question, Brian Barron, and then we'll go to Brent Cole. You're next.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. This is really great so far.
Thank you.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said at the beginning that you ask your clients these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Curious what happens if they can't give you an honest answer. I know this sort of thing, you can sort of make yourself believe whatever you want in some way. But if somebody comes to you and is honest and open and you understand, what happens if they can't answer one of these or maybe two of these? I know on the other side of it, if I can't answer them or having a tough time, it might not be the right place for me. But what happens to your clients when they can't answer them to you?
It's not happened often. And when I do this in a group setting like this, where we go through everybody's answers, what I'll see is that there are some generic answers that are given. They don't feel particularly heartfelt. And you can kind of see that. You can see some body language. You can see some of the tonality in their voice when they're talking. And those are the ones I know I need to pay attention to. And those are the ones that I will then go back and double check with management or leadership and say, so what about Brian? Yeah, he's struggling right now. Yeah, I kind of picked that up. Okay. And so, a lot of times they'll identify themselves, but you got to really pay attention. I've never had anybody just flat out leave a goose egg answer. Right. I mean, even when they'll say like, yeah, I can't answer this right now because I'm torn between this, and this, and we're pressed for time. It's like, well, okay. But Jeff, I'm going to go home and I'm going to answer this and I'm going to do it later. They still get a yellow flag in the back of my head. But they typically cover it up pretty well. But in the case where they really struggle answering it, it's typically management's always, usually aware of it already, so that it's just another kind of self-identification, I think, is really the way I think of it. Does that answer your question though?
Yeah, I think it does. And I don't know if I realized or not how your business works, but I understand that you might be working with multiple clients at a time, coaching them on sales. So, if it was like Scott who goes into a company to consult on their sales team and they can't answer these questions for the company, I mean, that's probably a huge red flag for Scott.
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't. I would never let somebody off the hook not giving an answer. I would push and press and pause and be quiet, because here's what I think. I think they have lots of different answers. I think they're afraid to give one answer because they think it's like religious canon and like the 10 Commandments and like they can never change it.
Right.
So I think you have to just say to somebody like, listen, you reserve the right to change your mind. Like, just pick one. So they're like putting it on a pedestal and like making it too serious if they can't answer. So my strategy is to try to like take the seriousness out of it and make it more fun and just be like, come on, just like guess, like there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. Like, well, what do you think? Just give me something, right? And I play a little bit of a clown kind of a role, and that brings their guard down. They're like, all right, well, and then they pick something. You just have to be willing to do that little, you know, in my experience, I have to be willing to do that little song and dance and that charade, and then people give me an answer, and then I run with that.
And you have to create that safer space for them to let their guard down. Exactly.
Right.
And sometimes it's a little bit of humor. Sometimes it's just, I'm going to play a role and I'm going to stand. Okay, fine. I'll wait. I've done that before. And then you get a chuckle and it goes. And sometimes if they're really struggling, and if it is like, okay, well, we have other stuff we have to get to here, then it's like, okay, we're going to come back to that. And then I'll go back to them individually and address it. But I think these are questions that you can come up with an answer for. So it's rare that someone, to Scott's point, it's rare that there's a goose egg there, right? What I will get in times where they don't have an answer, it's because they misunderstood the question. And so they answered it in a completely different way than it was intended. And I was like, okay, that's valuable, but this is what I meant. Like, oh, okay. All right. I'll get to that. Let's move on to the next one. It's some of it's just the feel of the room and who you're working with, Brian. But there's people tend to self-identify themselves in these groups of how in they are and how passionate they are, or are they just delivering boilerplate stuff and get me out of here? And those are the people that you flag for leadership. And I tend to spend my time elsewhere because I work with the people who can get the most benefit out of what I'm working on with them.
Thanks, Brian. Brent, let's go to you.
Thanks, Scott. Jeff, thanks for your time tonight.
Oh, sure.
You talked about something earlier today, stepping outside your comfort zone, challenging yourself. That's how you grow. And that resonates with me. I've relocated for work with the company I work for to another country, another city.
Wow.
But I feel like I might be growing stagnant. Scott, thanks for looking at one of my offers earlier this week. Jeff, what do you do? What steps do you take to know when you are not being challenged and you're not growing? How do you know when you fell in your comfort zone?
Ooh. The most significant time when I knew I was in my comfort zone, I ended up in a therapist chair. That was a sign for me. Things were just stagnant. It was the best job I'd ever had. I didn't know there was anything better. You know, I looked around in my industry and I didn't like any of those other jobs. I looked outside of my industry and they said, well, I didn't have 5 to 7 years of relevant experience. I'm like, well, you don't understand. I actually know how to sell. Like, isn't that worth anything? And it took me getting someone else's opinion and saying, Jeff, that sounds absolutely crazy. What they're asking you to do doesn't sound possible. It's like, no, you don't understand. My therapist was like, no, I don't think you understand. Right. But I had such dissatisfaction that it was affecting the way that I slept. I was having like physical symptoms of anxiety. Like it was just weird stuff. I knew something wasn't right. And I don't know if I was just mindful enough to recognize that it was probably my dissatisfaction with my job that might have had something to do with it. I give my wife a lot of credit because she knows me better than anybody else does. And she is willing to have those very difficult kinds of conversations with me. And what I also love about my wife is proximity. Like she can see things and recognize things that I can't recognize because they're just in part of my daily routine. To give you an example of that, when I first switched jobs, 2 weeks in, I'm sitting watching the ball game on TV. We didn't even have kids yet. And she's like, welcome back. Like, what do you mean welcome back? She's like, you're you again. You didn't notice. I did. You're in a good place. I'm really happy to have you, but you seem in a better place now. So I would chalk that up to surrounding yourself with people who know you and are willing to be real with you. Right. But you could also, in terms of, am I challenging myself enough? Hey, maybe that's once a quarter, you take a Friday afternoon and you just go for a drive, or you take a Friday afternoon and you post up somewhere that's your favorite place in the world, and you sit there with nothing. You got no podcasts, you got no phone, shut the phone off. It's just you and your thoughts. And am I fulfilled right now? Right? Am I getting what I want to out of this career, out of this job, out of this profession? Is this what I want? And kind of reevaluating that. you know, and we get these little reminders, you know, it's in COVID, I think was a huge reminder for a lot of people. And for me, even more so recently, as I, you know, take stock of what's going on with our summer and the kids on vacation from school and things like that. And I don't know that they're getting what they want to out of their summer. And I wonder what's holding them back. And I think about, you know, my kids have struggled more with COVID than I think they let on originally. And so I go back to my priorities and I say, okay, great. I love playing golf, but you know, what's more important to me than being okay at golf is like making sure that my son is growing up to be, you know, a strong, well-adjusted, capable human being. And my daughter is still going to go out and challenge her own status quo and do the things that they need to do. Do I need to be more for them? You know, when I see my kids struggling, I wonder if I need to do more for them. If you see yourself struggling, do you need to do more for you? You know, so I think there are a lot of cues that you can take from the environment around the environment that you're in and the people you surround yourself with. Are they willing to check in on you? And are you able and willing to check in on them? And do you have those conversations? So I don't know if that's a good answer, Brent, other than trying to be a little bit more mindful of that. Meditation has helped me with that. Taking more time to just sit still and self-reflect has helped me with that, whether you call that meditation or not. But it's also one of those things where if you're wondering, there's probably a reason that you're wondering, and that might tip you off to what the real situation, you know, what your actual answer to that question would be. But I mean, it's really easy for us to get so caught up in the month, the quarter, the year, and we forget to take stock of ourselves. And it's one thing to be able to produce. It's one thing to produce. It's another thing to be able to consistently produce. And that's the second half of that equation that we don't get right very often. So how often do you check in with yourself? And it should be at least once a quarter. I'm not great about doing it, but I'm getting better, I promise. And are you setting that time aside for yourself too?
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
That's a good question. I like that question, Brent. I think we got time for one more, and then we'll wrap. Go to David Fox.
Hey, I have a question, but it's up a level. So this has been awesome. Obviously, we always talk about why, and it's part of my own hiring profile and scoring as far as, you know, are you as mission and purpose driven as me?
Mm-hmm.
And do you care about solving problems for others? But I'm curious, when you have this engagement with founders and you go up a level, I've had experience where founders kind of forgot why they started their company, why they founded it in the first place, and their own why. And I'm just curious of two-parter. One, do you run into founders that struggle answering these questions? And those that do, is there any sort of correlation between success and failure when they forgot about their own why and why they started the company in the first place?
That's a really good question. And what I will tell you, and I don't know if it's helpful for you, is that I don't work with as many startups. So I don't have a big sample size to give you as it relates to that. What I can tell you though, is when the focus gets away from being purpose driven in the small sample size that I have, when the focus gets away from the purpose that the company was started in the first place, failure is not far behind. And, you know, we've talked about from a motivation standpoint, personally, the sales force, you know, getting out there and doing your own things. When the going gets tough, what gets the tough going? It's that purpose. And if there's a disconnection there, you lack the motivation to do the things that need to be done. And startup life is tough. There's a lot of adversity you have to overcome. There's, you know, the lack of funding and the lack of resources and the lack of personnel and a lot of that stuff. It relies on that collective purpose in order for people to do more than what they probably ought to be doing at that point in time. So if you don't have that connection with that drive and that purpose, bad things are bound to happen. They don't always, but they're bound to happen. So I don't know if I have a big enough sample size to share with you, David, on that. And so I apologize for that, but the purpose has to be the thing that binds a small team, particularly a driven, under-resourced team. That purpose has to be the resource that has to fill in the gap. And if there's a disconnection there, it's typically bad news.
One of the first questions I ask founders when I vet companies is, why did you start the company? And I'll say back to Cynthia, it's almost the same question you want to ask your VP of sales of why they got into leadership in the first place. If it wasn't to help you and help others, maybe not the right gig.
Right.
So thanks, Jeff.
Oh, thank you.
I got a pretty good sample size on this, David, and if I may,
Please.
I would be terrified if a founder couldn't answer these questions. Really, truly terrified. With one small asterisk, I wouldn't expect their answers to be perfect if they were a sort of engineer kind of founder, because they don't know how to, message things necessarily the right way, right? But they should certainly try, and not have to like sit there and kind of ponder it a little bit. Like it should, fly out of their mouth a little bit. That would be a very big red flag to me if a founder couldn't answer this stuff. But I think for you and me, in the roles that we've been in and that you're seeking, like part of our job is to take their answers and make it way sexier and make it presentable and digestible and simpler, right? That's like part of our role. So I'm sort of like, if you can just give me something, get me started, I'll finish it off. So that's my 2 cents on that, on your question, dude.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And I think for me, it kind of dovetails into culture. Like, what kind of culture are you trying to create here? Karen Peacock at Intercom a couple of years ago said, we have a tendency to fall in love with our product and forget about the problems we're trying to solve. And I think that that's telling. So thanks.
I agree. Thank you.
Any last words here, Jeff, before we wrap and get out of here? Thank you very much for spending some time with all of us. And if you haven't connected with Jeff already, please do. I dropped his LinkedIn profile in earlier, and you can find him on Twitter as well, and check out his Clubhouse show on Saturday mornings, I believe.
Saturday mornings.
Last words for us, Jeff.
So at the beginning, I talked about how I wore someone else's gold medal and it felt amazing. Felt amazing to feel the accomplishment of somebody else at the pinnacle. It didn't feel anywhere nearly as amazing as if it would have if it were my gold medal. And a lot of that has to do with the work that she put in that I didn't, and the talent that she was blessed with that I wasn't, and all that. Let's put that aside, though. Let's talk about what someone else does, and you thinking about what someone else's idea of success is and what your own idea of success is. And let's think about that. And let's think about how that drives every decision that you make. Are you really setting goals for yourself? Are you setting objectives for yourself? What is the pinnacle achievement that you want to accomplish? And does it align with your purpose? That's the thing that I want to be sure that I call out today. Because there are a lot of people out there who are going to say, yep, go make $1 million a year. Go make $10 million a year. Go fly into space because you can. That might not be you. That's okay. Quite frankly, you're going to get a lot more fulfillment out of whatever it is that you do and you decide is important to you than what someone else thinks and that what someone else has decided is going to be for them. And it doesn't make what they do wrong, doesn't make what they do bad. It makes what they do theirs. You get to decide. You get to decide what's important for you, and you will only do your best work when there is alignment between what you know is best for you and what you're asking yourself to do in order to get there. That's why this stuff's so important. We need you to do your best work. Everybody needs you to do your best work. And if you're setting yourself on the wrong track from the start, I don't want to go, you're letting everybody down, but like, we need you to do your best work. So do that for yourself. And Scott, thank you everybody for your attention tonight. This is cool. And I this is my why. I love this. And the fact that people are willing to show up and stay up super late in other countries across the pond and all, like, it's humbling.
Yeah.
I appreciate this.
We got Ireland, England, Kuwait, Costa Rica, Canada, and America. That's 5 countries that I'm aware of that have been here. So very, very cool. Thank you, everybody. And mostly, thank you, Jeff, for spending some time with us and dropping your knowledge on us, man. Take care, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.